So I'm going to be skipping a lot of slides here. The second half of the presentation more looks at various methods of NFP. I'm going to leave that to a very brief summary of it. We're not really here to learn about the methods of NFP so much as the church teachings, and that's what we've been working to cover. So I will go through this kind of quickly just to let you know there's a lot of variety. If any of you are looking at what method might fit you best, feel free to contact me. Everyone around here knows how to find me. A little too well, I would say, actually. So there are a number of methods of NFP, depending on whether you want to monitor. And believe it or not, there is a calendar method that actually does work. Whether you monitor temperature alone, whether you monitor the cervical fluids, i.e. the mucus alone, whether you put combinations together, whether you use this handy-dandy little monitor that helps monitor urinary hormones. And there are a number of major systems of NFP. We have several programs that we offer here within the parish. We have Southern Star Symptothermal. Laurie, that was in the video. Laurie teaches that for us. I teach that as well. Tom and Patty Strunk teach couple-to-couple league, which is another symptothermal, i.e. temperature and mucus method. We have Creighton model, which is a mucus-only method that also rolls into the, if you've heard talk around here about the NAPRO technology, or that I'm the NAPRO doctor, natural procreative technology, which is medical applications of this stuff. I took a 120-hour CME course in Nebraska in 2011, 2012 on this stuff, so that I actually work with patients using NFP charts and timed blood work to work with women with infertility, to work with women with PMS, irregular cycles, endometriosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So it's really awesome stuff. Another view of monthly cycles. I'll read this at start. Then when you're 13, a mysterious thing begins to happen once a month, Shirley. You begin to receive a MasterCard bill. So we monitor these different signs for changes in the hormones. This is a chart from the Southern Star Symptothermal, which is the program that is taught, that Laurie teaches, that I taught. It's a very basic symptothermal method. A number of couples use that. That's what Steve and Melissa know. That's what I taught them. So basic instructions for avoiding and achieving pregnancy. To avoid, have intercourse outside of the fertile window. To achieve, have intercourse during the fertile window. I've got a couple slides looking at efficacy. First of all, this is from a book in 1998, but I will show you the numbers still hold. This book is by an author from Princeton who is not a fan of NFP. It's a book, it's like the Bible, forgive the terminology, the Bible of contraception. This is from his book. So using correctly, if you look at ovulation method, which would be like your Creighton model, or symptothermal, like couple-to-couple league or Southern Star, their efficacy for correct use falls right in, falls right in with the other methods. This is not a 25% destined to fail method of family planning. This is a slide that I need to figure out how to better hack a program. I was sent by the diocese out to, down to Orlando for a training in teaching about fertility awareness to medical students. This was one of their slides, but I couldn't figure out how to hack the advanced in the PowerPoint. But this does give you a point looking at perfect use and typical use for methods of family planning. And when you look at methods, like perfect and typical are equal in methods that are not user dependent. So if a woman has a sterilization, she doesn't have to be doing anything once it's done. If a woman has an IUD, as long as she gets it changed on time and it hasn't falling out, there's nothing you have to do. Versus methods that depend on what you do with it. You have to remember to take your pill every day. So perfect use, 0.3%, typical use, 9%. Depo-Provera, perfect use, 0.2, typical use, 6%. You have to remember to show up every 3 months for the shot. So when you look at methods, how much input it has on the part of the patient or on the couple is going to help to affect the efficacy. The perfect use for the methods of not methods of NFP come up here. Typical use, the slide, I think for standard days is 12%. For symptothermal, I think the typical use, quote-unquote, failure rate is about 3 to 4%. And basically what happens is, for any of you who are medical people, you will hear NFP has a 24% failure rate. Let me just really quickly give you a 1 minute why that's bogus. I learned about this down in Orlando, that basically when they got that number, they do national surveys of family planning, and they ask people, if you got pregnant this year, what were you using? Were you using something to avoid pregnancy? Were you trying to get pregnant? Anybody who said anything that wasn't the pill, the condom, the whatever, became natural family planning. Oh, I kind of look at the calendar and I know when I'm fertile or not. Became NFP. I just know and I don't get pregnant on the 15th of the month. That became NFP. In other words, you would never look at things like this and call them a modern method of natural family planning, but for that purpose of that survey they did. So you got a 24% failure rate because you included everything but the kitchen sink. They're not looking at methods that are actually taught and standardized. So, looking at meta-analyses, looking at multiple studies, if you look at what they call single index, that would be like mucus only. You're looking at one factor. Here's the perfect and typical use efficacy, looking at multiple index methods. That is looking at like symptothermal, mucus temperature, or symptohormonal, mucus and that monitor. You have, again, the rates are much higher because you get, these are people using one method correctly, or one method typically. NFP can be used in irregular cycles. Your hormones are out of balance, we need to get more of the motor to the other side. I frequently am asked by patients, okay, I can't use NFP because my cycles are irregular. I can't use NFP because. NFP can be used in these cases. It's prospective. It's looking at what's happening in that cycle, and when we look at that cycle, we can tell when a woman is fertile or not within that cycle, and there are rules to help with that. Effects of NFP on marriage dynamics. Steve and Melissa gave a great testimony about the positives it's been. They will admit, and other couples I've worked with will admit, that there are times it gets a little challenging. And there are times where the abstinence can be an issue. I'm not going to lie about it, okay? It's out there. I work with couples long enough, it is out there. When I started teaching here, Father Luke begged me not to be Pollyanna about it with the couples and said, they need to know that if they have a struggle, they can come and talk with you about it. That it can't be, when they were first in the 1980s, 90s promotion of NFP thing, they basically threw it, they'd be throwing rose petals on the bed and it just looked amazing. These adorably happy couples with these adorably happy kids, and it looked like they never had a struggle. So if you were that couple that struggled with abstinence, or the couple that struggled with a cycle where the chart was hard to interpret, you felt like you were this outlier who needed to crawl into a corner. We've gotten more honest and open about where the challenges are. People are working within the methods to try to help with the places where charts get quirky, and like when women are breastfeeding and have a lot of trouble with other charts. Marquette has an awesome thing with that little monitor. And I've been blessed to be able to have been funded by the parish and the diocese over the last way too many years to go to training so that when couples have these issues, I can pretty much help them figure out an answer. And the answer doesn't just lie in one method. I've been trained in 2 of them, and I have familiarity with the others. This was a book recently. This book is hysterical, and you can get it on like Kindle for like around $5. Do it. It's very funny. The stories are hysterical. I would bring a copy for you to borrow, except that I was cheap and stuck it on my Kindle. But this is a good book to read. She's a blogger. She has no thought that's not published, I think. But her stuff is very funny on this. I mean, she's honest and good. Like, the ones when the chart is hard, or when, you finally got the night that you're trying to avoid it. You're both infertile and the kids climb into bed. You're like, okay, get out of here. This book is very honest and funny, and I think for couples using NFP, we ought to stick it in a library here, just to be able to have it so that you realize when you've got your moments that you're not alone. Briefly, just looking at infertility, and we see this. I mean, like now they're talking about being able to have 3 parents if someone else gives the mitochondrial DNA or something. Like, really? Okay. Birth control pill side effects. I don't think this is surprising to anybody. These are out there. I have seen patients with them in my office. So why don't doctors talk about these issues? This is a very hard way to read. This was a journal that talked about contraception. It's the family journal. It's the journal for the American Academy of Family Medicine, which is our professional group. And they put an article in about what methods of contraception were good if you had various health issues, if you have if a woman with heart disease, or a woman who has diabetes, or blood disorders, which methods of contraception are better. A couple of us wrote a letter saying that why didn't you address any modern methods of fertility awareness in this? We couldn't even get our letter to the editor published. We weren't asking for a whole article, we just wanted a letter to contest the article, and we couldn't get that published. Thankfully, that has improved. Someone who, from our parish, who went through residency at UVA and Family Med, she and one of the professors down there actually wrote it got in as a pro-con article about NFP, but that was better than nothing, where they were allowed to write the pro-NFP side and someone else wrote the con side. But they actually got published in the same journal a few years later. But we're struggling for validity. Abortifacient contraception, brief word on that. Basically, when you look at the hormonal methods of contraception, or the IUD, leave barriers off the table, it doesn't apply here. So like condoms or diaphragms don't apply. These methods have a certain rate of where if you read the fine print on the inserts or read the fine print in the PDR, if anybody looks at PDR anymore, where it talks about the methods of how a pill can work hormonally. That it can block you from ovulating, which is the release of the egg. It thickens the mucus to keep the sperm from reaching the egg, and that it will actually make implantation more difficult. Implantation is when the embryo, at about 7 days old, makes its way into the uterus and is trying to implant. If the uterine lining is made hostile, quote unquote, by the pill, that 7-day-old embryo can't implant, and it is actually lost as an early abortion that a woman may not recognize or may think she's having a heavier than normal period. That's the part, when I learned about that with the birth control pill, that got me to the point where I can't write this anymore. I was pro-life, and once I went and actually when the priest said that that was a possibility, I thought he didn't go to medical school and he needed to kind of do his research. We were living in Pennsylvania, I drove to the Hershey Medical Center, this was before the internet. I drove to the Hershey, got someone to watch the kids, drove to the Hershey Medical Center and went into their medical library and started pulling articles off the shelf and photocopying them and driving them back home and started reading them. And it was right. And that's when I knew no matter what else I did, I couldn't keep doing that anymore. IUDs are very similar because they will, again, the uterine lining issue. And in residency, I wrote tons of pill prescriptions, and I even put into IUDs, and really thought that was kind of cool because it was a really neat procedure, and I loved procedures. Don't do that one. I'll skip this one, except that if any of you are medical and want help with the references on this, I'm more than happy to talk to you privately, but there is an article that kind of goes through the analysis of how indirectly you can kind of look at this abortifacient thing in a study that got actually published in an AMA journal. Fertility treatments, as you probably IVF is off the table, IUI is off the table. Intercourse needs to be achieved by a couple in the act of intercourse. That act can be aided by, like, I can give medications to help a woman ovulate. I can give medications to help support the pregnancy, like for the second half of the cycle, if she does achieve pregnancy, to try to help the second half of the cycle look better. But I can't do anything as a physician to replace the marital act. And actually, the things that we can do now, when I took that course in Omaha, the things we can do without IVF and intrauterine insemination, IUI, are much better. This week, I've had 2 of my infertility patients achieve pregnancy this week. I'm just like, the one called this morning that she has good news for you, and I called her and said, number 2, yes. Number 1 was Monday on the feast day, and that woman had been infertile. That's a quick story to close with. She had been infertile for 4 years. She's a drug rep, and she comes to my office just like drug reps do and leave their little pens and their samples. She had heard my staff talking about something about one of my NAPRO babies, and she asked me if she could speak with me a minute. She pulls me into my office and said, you know, I've seen the guys up the hill, I've done some tests, I've done some studies, they can't tell me why, but they told me that we can make you pregnant. She said, I want my husband to make me pregnant. She's not Catholic. She said, but something is wrong with this. Nobody knows what's wrong with me, and I want my husband and me to make our baby. I don't want the guys making it in the lab. And I started working her up, and she had 2 surgeries in Richmond with the doctor who does the endometriosis surgery. And after 4 years of trying, she found out on Monday that she's pregnant. And she is beside herself, and I almost cried with her. I mean, I'm still like in chills about it. I'm just thrilled because I still remember the conversation. And so there are infertility treatments that are listed when you have to do the seminal fluid analysis on the male. We have ways of doing that that do not involve masturbation, so we have ways of working around that. So if any of you are in that position, please talk to me or talk to one of the priests, because there really are, you don't have to settle for second best on infertility treatments to follow the church here. It was important enough to Bishop DiLorenzo and to Father Luke that they paid about $6,000 to get me out to Omaha to take the class so that the stuff was available here. So please use me, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to skip. So we made a joke that this was our textbook in Nebraska. This was the woman from St. Thomas who went with me. We used to joke that it was so heavy you studied in bed in curfew because it was like 1,200 pages. And you had to study it physically. Also made your bags overweight in the airport. These are some NFP programs, so you have that on your references. There's lots of resources. The St. Thomas page has links to a lot of resources. The Diocese of Richmond page, I'm the NFP coordinator for Richmond because I have no idea what to do in free time. Also has resources, and just feel, like I said, anyone around here knows how to find me, from Melanie through probably even the janitor knows how to find me too. So there you go. Thank you, and I did it. They were having like things. They were very happy. I mean, and like my runner was eating junk food. You have to get that. That's our Christmas card this year. It's too good.
All right, thank you very much, Karen. So as you can see, Karen put a ton of thought, a ton of work into this. She doesn't get paid for this. I mean, but she did it completely out of the generosity and charity of her heart. I think it was an excellent presentation. I think y'all would agree. So again, let's just give her a hand for. Thank you so much. All right, we have. I made that she has an article there for anyone who's interested. Unfortunately, you have to take one page at a time. There's 7 pages if you'd like. A couple of pamphlets there, and I will attach the handouts and that article as well, and the references for, I know we have a few in the medical profession here. If you'd like those references, I'll attach all that along with the video on the next page. So if you have any questions about any of this, or if you'd like to talk about any of it, just send me an email. And then also, if you'd like to get in touch with Karen, I can arrange that as well. So I know there was a lot to digest today. But again, any questions or anything, just please don't hesitate to send me an email and get in touch, okay? All right, well, our next class is January 14th. So a long break there. If you're behind on any of the readings, or if you want to get a little ahead, this would be a great time. So, all right, well, let's just end with a short prayer. Let's just end with in our Father. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us